The House Judiciary Committee hearing room was already tense when Chairman Jim Jordan issued what he clearly believed would be his decisive challenge. Representative Jasmine Crockett had been presenting documented evidence of civil rights violations inside federal immigration detention facilities for about 8 minutes when Jordan abruptly interrupted from the chairman's seat. "The gentle lady keeps referencing evidence, but I have to question whether this so-called evidence actually supports her conclusions," he said, his voice carrying the familiar prosecutorial tone he had honed through years of high-profile hearings. Jordan suggested that the examples Crockett cited were merely cherry-picked anecdotes designed to create a narrative rather than true documentation of systemic problems. The room stiffened immediately. In a few sentences, Jordan had effectively accused Crockett of misrepresenting or fabricating evidence before both the committee and the national audience watching at home. Several Republican members nodded in approval. This was the kind of confrontation they expected from him. Representative Crockett, however, did not flinch. She looked directly at the chairman, calm but unmistakably firm. "Mr. Chairman, everything I have presented comes from the Department of Homeland Security's own Inspector General reports, federal court findings, and sworn testimony from career officials. If you are questioning this evidence, you are questioning your own administration's official findings." Holding up a thick folder of documents, she added, "I have the complete documentation right here with page numbers and dates. Would you like me to read specific passages into the record, or would you prefer to withdraw your characterization of official government reports as cherry-picked anecdotes?" The hearing room erupted. Democratic members looked energized, while several Republicans shifted uncomfortably. In 2 sentences, Crockett had forced Jordan into a corner. He could either challenge the credibility of official government documents or admit his own accusation was baseless. In this moment, rigorous preparation collided with aggressive rhetoric, and preparation decisively won. To understand why this confrontation resonated so strongly, it is important to consider the political dynamics of the House Judiciary Committee and the stark contrast between the 2 lawmakers involved. Jim Jordan, who has represented Ohio's 4th District since 2007, has built his reputation on combative questioning and theatrical oversight tactics. As a founding member of the House Freedom Caucus and the current Judiciary Committee chairman, he has positioned himself as a relentless investigator of what he portrays as Democratic overreach and government misconduct. His style is confrontational, often interrupting witnesses, challenging credibility, and framing Democratic-presented evidence as partisan interpretation rather than objective fact. Under his leadership, the committee has prioritized partisan confrontation over bipartisan inquiry, with hearings frequently shaped to generate media attention rather than substantive legislative outcomes. Representative Jasmine Crockett, by contrast, embodies a fundamentally different approach. A former civil rights attorney, she brings rigorous legal training to congressional oversight, grounding every assertion in verifiable documentation. Aware that Jordan routinely challenges Democratic evidence, she entered committee service prepared for precisely this environment. Crockett reviewed Inspector General reports, federal court rulings, and official agency documents in detail, ensuring that every claim she made could be backed up by specific citations, dates, and page numbers. When assigned to the Judiciary Committee, she understood that she could not rely on summaries or general descriptions. She would need primary source documentation capable of withstanding Jordan's aggressive scrutiny. At this hearing, the stakes were particularly high. The topic, conditions inside federal immigration detention facilities, sits squarely at the intersection of partisan divides. Republicans have generally defended detention operations as necessary for border security, while Democrats have highlighted documented abuses that undermine civil rights and human dignity. Crockett arrived armed with extensive official evidence detailing inadequate medical care, unsanitary conditions, prolonged detention of minors, and limited access to legal counsel. She also anticipated Jordan's likely strategy: dismiss the evidence as anecdotal or politically motivated rather than engage with its substance. As chairman, Jordan held procedural advantages: control over who could speak, how long they could speak, and whether follow-up questions were allowed. His interruption was a clear attempt to undermine Crockett's credibility before her full case could unfold. What he did not anticipate was how thoroughly she had prepared, not just the evidence, but a strategy to defend it. She had organized her documents for immediate access, prepared responses to predictable challenges, and positioned her evidence as coming from official government sources that Republicans could not easily dismiss as partisan. When Jordan accused her of cherry-picking, Crockett responded with precision. She cited the DHS Inspector General's report examining conditions at 23 detention facilities across 6 states, noting that 18 of those facilities had systematic deficiencies in medical care. These were not anecdotes, they were official findings. When Jordan tried to argue that the Inspector General's conclusions were merely interpretations, Crockett countered with documented protocols, comparison data, and expert testimony, all of which illustrated objective, measurable failures. When he shifted to arguing that facilities faced resource constraints, she pointed out that the Inspector General had already examined funding levels and found the primary problem was not lack of money, but poor resource allocation by facility administrators. Every avenue Jordan attempted, she had anticipated. His challenges grew weaker with each response. Hers grew stronger. By the time she reminded him that many of the deficiencies she cited occurred under both Democratic and Republican administrations, Crockett had effectively blocked every partisan escape route. The hearing's dynamic shifted entirely. Democrats built momentum, repeatedly referencing Crockett's meticulously documented evidence during their questioning of witnesses. Republican members became noticeably cautious, aware that dismissing evidence without understanding its source risked repeating Jordan's mistake. Legal experts, media outlets, and advocacy groups quickly recognized the significance of the exchange. Clips of Crockett holding up the Inspector General's report went viral. Analysts praised her disciplined use of documentation and her ability to stay composed under pressure. Advocacy organizations began incorporating her exact citations into their own materials. Even within Congress, members began approaching her for advice on preparing for hearings under confrontational leadership. The aftermath extended beyond the moment. Democratic members adopted her preparation techniques. Media coverage became more attentive to whether lawmakers supported claims with official documentation. DHS implemented administrative reforms to address medical care deficiencies highlighted in the reports. Crockett's standing within Congress rose sharply, leading to new assignments and a growing national profile as a credible voice on civil rights and oversight. The confrontation provided a lasting lesson in congressional power. Authority is not only positional, it is evidentiary. Thorough preparation, grounded in authoritative documentation and delivered with composure, can neutralize even the most aggressive attempts to dismiss or distort the truth. Chairman Jordan had procedural power, but Representative Crockett had the receipts, and when the two collided, the receipts won.